Hello. Hello, Facebook. This is my first time ever doing this. I hope it's working. So back in about 1997, I was telling my kids stories all the time, told them all kinds of fairy tales. And I got kind of bored with doing the same fairy tales, over and over again. So I started to combine them. And so back in 1997, I came up with a story called A Fairy Tales, where sleeping little Cindersnowylocks and Jack and the Three Pigs meet Rumpelstiltskin. So I have contracted with an illustrator, and she's done a fantastic job illustrating. I haven't published. It hasn't gone to a printer yet. I do have ISBN numbers, but there's some really nice illustrations done by Laura Beth Ramsey, and so I hope to be getting this published soon. I've got everything ready. I just need to find a printer. So without further ado, everyone in Facebook and everybody staying socially distanced and making sure that we can prevent further spread of COVID-19, I present A Fairy Tales, or Sleeping Little Cindersnowylocks and Jack and the Three Pigs meet Rumpelstiltskin. Once upon a time, in a land far, far, lived a beautiful young girl with her mother and father. The girl's name was Briar Rose, and she was very happy with her kind and loving parents. Briar Rose was a lovely little albino girl with long white hair as white as freshly fallen country snow. In fact, her hair was so snowy white, her parents nicknamed her Snowylocks. Being albino, of course, Snowylocks could not venture outside unless she wore something to protect her from the sun. Snowylocks loved the outdoors so much, her parents bought her a beautiful little Red Riding Hood to wear outside. Snowylocks could now go outside and not get burned by the sun's hot rays. They were a happy family until the day Snowylocks' mother became ill. The illness became worse, and Snowylocks' mother died. Snowylocks' father was sad and lonely and wanted dearly to remarry so Snowylocks could again have a mother. He soon fell in love and married a beautiful woman with two ugly daughters. Snowylocks now had a stepmother and two ugly stepsisters. But they all lived happily together until the day Snowylocks' father became ill. Soon after falling ill, Snowylocks' father died, and Snowylocks was left with her stepfamily. Soon after her father died, Snowylocks learned that her stepmother and stepsisters were not nice at all. They were downright mean. They made Snowylocks do all of the housework. They took all of Snowylocks' nice things for themselves and left her with only rags to wear. They even made her clean the fireplace every day. Snowylocks cleaned the fireplace so often that she was usually covered in cinders. Because of this, her stepmother and ugly stepsisters began to call her Cindersnowylocks. Unknown to Cindersnowylocks, her stepmother was actually an evil sorceress. She even had a magic mirror in her bedroom. Every day, the evil sorceress would look into the mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" To which the mirror would always say, "The fairest woman in all the land is you who right before me stand." But one day, when Cindersnowylocks was about 16 years old, she was walking through the hallway, and the magic mirror caught a glimpse of her as she walked by. The magic mirror thought to himself, "Whoa, she's gorgeous." Later that evening, when the evil sorceress stood before the mirror and recited her daily chant, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" This time the mirror replied, "The fairest once was you, my dear, but still the fairest lives quite near. The one whose beauty really rocks is little Cindersnowylocks." Oh, was she mad? She had never been so angry in her life. she decided she would cast a spell on little Cindersnowylocks. As little Cindersnowylocks was walking down the hallway, she heard the evil sorceress say something about Cindersnowylocks, pricked on a spindle, fall asleep and never wake up, kissed by a handsome prince. Little Cindersnowylocks was terrified. She didn't want to fall asleep forever. She didn't know what a spindle was, but she knew that if she stuck around, her evil sorceress stepmother would eventually get her. Little Cindersnowylocks decided that she would leave and never come back. She ran to the forest to get as far away from her evil stepmother and ugly stepsisters as she could. She ran and she ran and she ran and she ran. She ran until the forest became dark and she could run no more. She lay down by the trunk of a tree and fell asleep. When little Cindersnowylocks awoke, the sun was high in the air. She was glad she remembered to bring along her little Red Riding Hood to protect her from the sun. As she looked around, she did not recognize this part of the forest. Off in the distance, she spotted a clearing with a cottage in the center. Little Cindersnowylocks decided to investigate. As she came nearer, she noticed a gigantic green stump next to the cottage. In the middle of the stump was an axe, and next to the stump was a great big hole, as if something very large and very heavy had fallen. The stump looked as though it were part of a beanstalk, but it was much too big for that. No sooner had little Cindersnowylocks noticed the strangeness of the stump when she realized that the cottage was even stranger. The cottage appeared to have been made of 3 different types of materials. Part of the cottage was made of straw. The straw then turned into wood and sticks, which made up another part of the home. And finally, the cottage was completed with bricks. How odd, little Cindersnowylocks thought to herself. She decided to go inside. The door was slightly open. Little Cindersnowylocks pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Hello, is anyone home?" little Cindersnowylocks asked out loud. All she heard in response was the sound of harp music. She peered in, and her eyes fell on the dining room table. Right in the middle of the table was a bag of gold coins, with some spilling onto the table. The table itself was of the same strange kind of construction as the cottage. The table had 4 wooden legs, which supported a top made out of bricks. Around the outside edge of the table was a rattan wicker border, straw. There were 3 bowls on top of the table. Little Cindersnowylocks peered into the bowls. They were all empty, but for the tiniest bit of porridge. Little Cindersnowylocks then inspected the bowls more closely. The first bowl was made of tiny bricks. The bricks were cemented together into the shape of the bowl, and then a fine glaze was baked upon them, heavy but very usable. The second bowl was carved of a single piece of wood. The bottom was carved out and polished to a high sheen. The grain of the wood stood out and made for a very pretty bowl. The third bowl was woven of straw. A very tight weave made the bowl almost tight enough to hold water, a fine piece of craftsmanship. Little Cindersnowylocks again heard the harp music and decided to see where it was coming from. She walked into the next room and noticed on a small table in the middle of the room a harp, singing all by itself. Curiouser and curiouser, she thought to herself. She was about to sit down to listen when she noticed the 3 chairs. The first chair was made of brick and looked as though it had been built right there in the house. There was a small pad on the seat, but it still looked quite uncomfortable. The second chair was a well-built wooden rocking chair. The third chair was a comfortable-looking wicker, straw chair, which appeared to be just right for sitting. Little Cindersnowylocks sat down to listen to the harp sing. Little Cindersnowylocks was beginning to doze off to sleep when the harp said that there were beds upstairs. Taking that as an invitation to go upstairs and take a nap, little Cindersnowylocks said thanks and started upstairs. As she reached the top of the stairs, little Cindersnowylocks looked into a large bedroom and saw another strange sight. In one corner of a small room, In one corner of the room, a small man stood up and said,
"Fee-fi, fo-furl, I smell the blood of a little girl, and be she well or be she lame, there is no way she'll guess my name."
He then stamped his foot and disappeared. Now that was strange, thought little Cindersnowylocks. She looked around the room again and recognized a disturbing pattern. There was one very uncomfortable looking bed made of bricks. There stood another bed made of wood and a third bed made of, you guessed it, straw. Little Cindersnowylocks then looked back in the corner where the little man had disappeared and suddenly realized why someone in the house really liked straw. In the corner of the room stood a strange contraption with a large wheel. On one side of the machine was a large pile of straw, and coming off of the machine on the other side was gold. Lots and lots of gold. Interested in this strange spinning contraption, little Cindersnowylocks began to run her hand around and over the machine. As she reached the top of the machine, she pricked her finger on a pointed part and realized too late it must be one of those spindles which her evil sorceress stepmother mentioned. Little Cindersnowylocks began to feel sleepy and fell onto the bed of straw, fast asleep. Had she still been awake, sleeping little Cindersnowylocks would have heard at that very moment the sounds of singing from the forest. Jack and the three pigs were returning from a day of working in the mine, singing,
"Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's back to home we go."
They noticed the open door and ran inside. The singing harp told them that a little girl was upstairs. Jack and the three pigs raced upstairs to find sleeping little Cindersnowylocks asleep in the bed, and their friend Rumpelstiltskin, Rump for short, gone. They looked at each other and said, "Not again." At that moment, a woodsman came running into the house and up the stairs carrying an axe. "Has anyone seen a big bad wolf?" the woodsman asked. No, you're in the wrong story," said Jack. "Yeah," said the three pigs. "We need a handsome prince to kiss the girl and wake her up." "Oh," said the woodsman, "I moonlight as a handsome prince." He then removed his woodsman's coveralls, and there he stood in fine prince's clothing. "Well, I don't know about handsome," said Jack, "but you'll have to do. Kiss the girl." With that, the prince gave sleeping little Cindersnowylocks a kiss. She woke up, smiled at the prince and at Jack and at each of the three pigs, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Let's see. That one. That's the end. So thank you. If I find some books in the public domain, I may read some more, but I'm not going to break anyone's copyright. So feel free to share this. And if you want a copy of the book, I do expect to get it printed soon. Love you all. Thank you. Stay safe and stay socially isolated, or at least socially distanced.
Can I listen?
Yes, you can listen. And end live video.